For months, we've been talking about what the Ravens could be in 2026. New coaching staff, Trey Hendrickson addition, offensive line upgrades, young players ready to take that next step. But training camp is here, and none of that matters anymore. This is where the jobs are won. This is where the roster spots disappear. This is where the Ravens will answer the biggest questions surrounding this football team. And today we're breaking down key training camp battles that I am watching closest, from the center competition to the defensive line depth, while Nnamdi Madubuike and Travis Jones work their way back to the race for the final cornerback and safety spots, and why a few of these competitions could have a much bigger impact on the Ravens season than most people realize. Let's dive into it. Training camp is here. Ravens football is officially back. I cannot wait to see how all of this unfolds over the next 6 weeks leading up to week 1 against the Indianapolis Colts. Today, I wanted to break down some key position battles that I am really glued on and I think are the most important position battles to watch throughout training camp and the preseason. And we'll start with the most obvious one, and that is the center competition. We still don't technically know who the starting center is going to be. A lot of the starting spots on the Ravens roster is pretty cleared up, and the center spot is not one of them. Now, we just recently signed Ethan Pocic, and he has by far the most starting NFL experience in the center room with 97 career starts compared to Danny Pinter, who only has 10 career starts, Jovan Gwynn with 0, Corey Bullock, who's on the non-football injury list, still recovering from offseason surgery, also has 0 starts. Then you have undrafted free agent rookie Nick Dawkins in the mix as well. So on paper, this is now Ethan Pocic's job to lose. But how does this play out in training camp? He's coming off an Achilles tear in December. I know he's cleared to play, but are we getting full go Ethan Pocic running with the ones this week? Is Danny Pinter going to still be running with the ones? Is Jovan Gwynn mixed in there as well? This is going to be a fascinating battle to watch throughout training camp and the preseason. Like I said, my prediction is Ethan Pocic wins this job. I think it's his job to lose, but that's health depending. And we can't ignore that Danny Pinter and Jovan Gwynn have been the guys that have been rotating with the ones throughout the entire offseason. They have a bit of a leg up understanding Declan Doyle's scheme and terminology, and I don't have any doubts that Ethan Pocic can't pick this up, but I am very interested this week who's the starting center out there running with the ones, and as the weeks progress, is Ethan Pocic definitely the guy? Is it clear cut, or is there still a true battle at center? I think it's still going to be an open competition throughout camp, at least early in camp. Jesse Minter said last week that he's still looking at all the guys to not count guys like Danny Pinter out, but I do think this is Ethan Pocic's job to lose. I do predict that Ethan Pocic is going to get this job, but who the Ravens starting center is going to be one of the most fascinating position battles throughout camp and the preseason. Another fascinating group is the wide receivers. Now, I think it's pretty clear cut who the 6 wide receivers that are probably going to make the 53 are. Maybe the Ravens carry 7 if they want an extra special teams guy. They just signed veteran Chris Moore. Somebody like that, or Dayton Wade, could sneak on as the 7th wide receiver, but I do think it's definitely Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Tez Walker, Elijah Surratt, Jacoby Lane, and LaJohntay Wester. Those seem like the obvious 6, but what's most fascinating, or what I'm most interested in watching these receivers, is outside of Zay and Rashad Bateman, which guy is getting the most volume and targets and making the most plays? Who is that wide receiver 3? I do think that they all have different skill sets and are going to be put in various situations to create advantageous matchups. Tez Walker can stretch the field. Elijah Surratt, I think, is going to get a lot of work in the slot, is really good at understanding zoning and spacing, and has great hands, and is also a bigger wide receiver. Jacoby Lane, bigger wide receiver, great catch radius, great contested catch ability, great red zone target. I think Jacoby Lane could help replace Isaiah Likely and DeAndre Hopkins and play a bit of that role. And, Elijah Surratt is a bigger slot guy that we're going to be able to use, and Tez is going to definitely be able to use that speed. So they all bring something different to the table. But which guy stands out in training camp in the preseason, which guy steps up and, builds chemistry with Lamar Jackson and builds confidence with this new coaching staff. That is going to be fascinating to watch play out, because we could all talk about the hypotheticals of like, this is Tez Walker's breakout opportunity year. This is the year he's finally going to get the opportunity and show it. And we know he has the talent. We're really high on the rookie wide receivers in Elijah Surratt and Jacoby Lane. LaJohntay Wester can't be forgotten there. I think he brings a lot to the table as well and is going to be a star returner in this league. I still believe that. I think he's got elite return ability in the punt game and is going to take at least 2 back to the house this year. We saw one in the preseason last year. We did not see any in the regular season, but I do think we do this year. But which guy ends up making plays on offense, and I know they'll all make a few plays, but I think somebody in this group is going to kind of take a lead and really earn Lamar's trust and this coaching staff's trust, especially Declan Doyle, to, scheme up plays to get them more involved. I do think Bateman's going to have a resurgence year. I think he's definitely going to be heavily involved because we didn't add a veteran to the mix. So really it is Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman. Zay Flowers is obviously going to lead the entire wide receiver room in targets. But which younger receiver out of this group earns more reps and stands out and makes a lot of plays? That's going to be fascinating. And then do the Ravens carry a 7th? I think it's unlikely, but we do have some solid options with Dayton Wade and Chris Moore, and especially Chris Moore's special teams presence. You never know. They could carry a 7th if they want that extra special teams guy. I don't see that happening. I think they do carry 6, but we'll see how it all plays out. I think the tight ends are also an interesting group to watch this year. We know Mark Andrews is going to be tight end 1. I think we have an idea of how Durham Smythe is going to be used. You can just go back and watch how he was used in Chicago last year with Declan Doyle. I think he's going to be a versatile tight end that is going to be blocking, going out for some shorter passes, putting a fullback role occasionally. We don't have a true fullback anymore. We're going to use the tight ends in that role. So I think we have an idea of what Durham Smythe and Mark Andrews are going to look like in this offense. But how does Matt Hibner and Josh Cuevas, the rookies, how are they used? Who steps out of that pack? Who ends up making the most plays? They bring different skill sets themselves. Matt Hibner is definitely more of a receiving threat. He's an athlete. I think Josh Cuevas is another versatile guy similar to Durham Smythe that can do a lot of different things in the blocking game and the receiving game. So which one of those guys ends up making the plays and earning more playing time? Because the tight end room is a lot different than last year. We don't have Isaiah Likely. We don't have Charlie Kohler. Which rookie steps up and makes the most plays throughout training camp in the preseason to earn more of a role in this regular season? Another fascinating position battle to watch is the D-line depth. We know Matabike and Travis Jones were put on PUP to start camp. Now, they can come off PUP at any time. This is not the regular season PUP that happens after the final roster cuts where you have to miss 4 games. They are just put on PUP to get their conditioning right and get reacclimated. Jeff Zarebek reported that both of these guys are expected to be back at practice soon. Matabike could come back to practice as early as next week. So we will see these guys back during training camp at some point soon, but not this week. So what happens this week with the D-line depth? John Jenkins also put on PUP for an undisclosed reason. Calais Campbell been dealing with a lot of stuff this offseason, praying for him and his family. There's a lot of younger guys that have an incredible opportunity in Aeneas Peebles, Rayshawn Benny that we just drafted, CJ Okoye, Broderick Washington, who's not coming off his best season. Which one or two of these guys end up making this roster and making enough noise throughout training camp in the preseason? There's a lot of opportunity for these young guys. Any of these young guys can step up and end up making the roster and earning some playing time, some valuable playing time in the regular season, because we have a lot of star power at the top end, but they're dealing with some injuries. Matabike, we have no idea how much he's going to actually play right away. Calais Campbell, they're going to probably monitor his minutes a little bit. John Jenkins is older. There's a lot of questions at the top, and I think there's an incredible opportunity for CJ Okoye and Aeneas Aeneas Peebles to really earn some playing time and some reps in this defense. So I will be glued into the D-line depth and seeing how they perform, especially early in camp before Travis Jones and Madubuike come back. Another position battle that I got my eyes on is that 6 cornerback spot. So we know it's going to be Nate Wiggins, Marlon Humphrey, Chidobe Awuzie, TJ Tampa, and probably Chandler Rivers since we just drafted him. Those are 5 corners right there. You're probably only going to carry 6, so there's only room for one more guy, and that's a battle between Robert Longerbeam, Keon Martin, Bilal Kone, Marquise Robinson, and then you got some undrafted guys like Matthew McDoom and Ladarius Webb Jr. And Bilal Kone starting on PUP as well, so we're not going to see him right away, but throughout camp, there is a spot available for one of these guys. Keon Martin ended up making it last year as an undrafted rookie free agent, but does drafting Chandler Rivers change that equation in any type of way? He probably plays a similar role. They're going to play slot, nickel, and they're versatile and play some special teams as well, but there's not a ton of room here. There's only going to be one of these guys that probably make it. I think that it's going to be Bilal Kone or Marquise Robinson, which is a dark horse that not a lot of people talk about. But it'll be interesting to see which young cornerback kind of separates himself and earns that final roster spot. Also very interested to see TJ Tampa in this Jesse Minter defense. This is a guy that hasn't gotten an insane amount of opportunity, kind of like Tez Walker on offense. We've seen some flashes from TJ Tampa. He has the frame, he has the skill set, but let's see the opportunity out there with volume. And I think you might see TJ Tampa a bit more in this Jesse Minter defense. So excited to see what he looks like, excited to see Chandler Rivers, and to watch that final cornerback spot play out. Staying in the secondary, I think there's another battle for that 4th safety spot. So our top 3 safeties that are basically all starters is Malachi Starks, Kyle Hamilton, and Jalen Hawkins, who we just signed from the Patriots this offseason. Those 3 are locks, no doubt. They're going to be playing a ton. They're going to be on the field together a ton. Jesse Minter loves to use safeties. I think we're going to see Malachi Starks and Jalen Hawkins out there together a lot, so Kyle Hamilton's kind of freed up to roam and get near the line of scrimmage. But who's that 4th safety spot? Keondre Jackson was that last year, was a special team star. I think he definitely has the edge. But the Ravens also signed Kayvon Wallace from Seattle this offseason, who has a lot of special teams experience, a lot of safety experience. I think that he is definitely still in this mix. We'll be battling with Keondre Jackson and really just battling overall to make a roster spot. I think that both of these guys could make the team. If I had to make a guess right now, I think Keondre Jackson definitely makes the team. He just made too many plays on special teams for us last year. But I also could see the Ravens keeping 5 safeties to get Kayvon Wallace on. Now, that does sacrifice another roster spot in another position group, so I'm not positive that the Ravens are going with 5 safeties. So it'll be a true battle there to watch who's kind of making the most plays out of Kayvon Wallace and Keondre Jackson, who cements themselves as that 4th safety, and does someone cement themselves enough that we need to keep 5 safeties and have more special teams presence in that room? So those are the position battles that I am just glued in on. QB3 is also up for grabs, but I think Skylar Thompson's probably going to end up getting that. And the Ravens usually don't carry 3 quarterbacks. One will just be on the practice squad as an emergency 3rd quarterback. So I would say Skylar Thompson's in the lead for that, but we'll see how that plays out. And then some honorable mentions of not position battles, so guys that'll make the team, but that I'm just excited to see is Trey Hendrickson. We haven't seen Trey Hendrickson with pads on the Ravens. I can't wait for that. I can't wait to see Zion Young, how disruptive he is. I can't wait to see 1st-round pick Vanga Ioane with the pads on. I think when the pads come on in training camp, it always ramps up the trenches. You don't really get a good idea of what's going on or who's bringing what to the table on the offensive or defensive line when there's no pads on. So I cannot wait for the pads to come on in camp, and we'll have a much better idea of how this offensive line looks, because this offensive line's a lot different. We got 3 new starters on this offensive line, and John Simpson, Ethan Posick, or Danny Pinter, whoever wins the center job, and then at right guard, Vanga Ioane. There's also great depth there now with Voorhees as a backup, Emory Jones Jr. as a backup, Carson Vincent. Also really curious to see how the running back room plays out. Does Adam Randall make enough noise throughout camp in the preseason to leap Rasheen Ali? Do the Ravens carry 4 running backs? Do we see a Justice Hill resurgence? Like, what happens in that running back room? We obviously know Derrick Henry is going to lead the room in carries and be the bell cow, but there's some questions, whether Rasheen Ali and Adam Randall both make the roster, and if they do, how do those carries and reps look like? I think that they both also bring special teams presence too. We've seen Rasheen Ali as a returner. Adam Randall has also returned kicks in college. So who ends up making enough noise out of that room to, get that RB2 or RB3 spot on the depth chart and get some carries and some play this offseason? So it'll be fascinating to watch this all unfold. Training camp is officially underway. Let me know what you guys are most interested in watching throughout camp and the preseason. What position battles or what bold predictions do you guys have about any players? Let me know all of your thoughts. I appreciate you guys, as always, for tuning in to another episode of the Sleeper Ravens. Have a beautiful rest of your day, and I will see you guys next week to talk more about what's going on in training camp.